All right, let's do it live on a First Friday edition of Cleveland Browns Daily. I am merely Beau. He is the great Z. We've got a lot to get to. Before we get to all of it, though, there have been few people more loyal to you and I on this program than Ned Fox Plimpton. Very few people.
I'm glad you were doing this because I had the tweet pulled up. I wanted to answer this on the air. Beautiful.
I did too. I did not. I saw it this morning, and I have not responded on the social. So this Ned Fox Plimpton deserves the start of the show. I mean, we've got news with this roster, but Ned Fox Plimpton deserves the start of the show for all he's done. He's created Zoom links for us, among other things.
Yes.
And honestly, I look forward to being a mentor in his entire life. He tweets us yesterday, Beau Bishop, I need your help. If I have this true Friday off, what does it make tomorrow for me? So he tweets this yesterday. He says, also, Mrs. Ned Fox Plimpton and I are celebrating 2 years of pure joy.
NFP.
Part of it is 2 nights in Cleveland and the Browns game on Sunday. Congratulations. Where to eat and activities, he says, tweeting to the great C. Yes. All right, Ned Fox, this is what I would tell you, my friend. It's still a First Friday. It's just the best First Friday. Because what you're looking at is a First Friday, a Thursday, and another Friday. You're looking at a one-day work week, pal.
Dare I say?
So you're going, enjoy yourself. You could almost call it
a first Saturday,
a second Friday. Then it gets convoluted. I would look at it as a one-day work week.
Yep.
I would look at it as a one-day work week. I would look at it as first Friday, one-day work week, actual Friday, and then enjoy Cleveland. So that would be the official stance of Uncle Beau on how to handle a First Friday that has an actual Friday off, which is actually the highest level of First Fridays you can get. It's as good as it gets on a one-day off situation. On a Thursday, Friday off, that's different. That's something else. That's Nirvana. But on a one-day off during the week, you will always take a Friday off over a Monday off, and the first Friday leading into the actual Friday is the win. Now, as for his conversation for you, where to eat and activities. Obviously, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and so some things will have to be moved a little bit, but the floor is yours, sir.
Well, I would say, to our beloved Ned Fox Plimpton, and I like how he calls her Mrs. NFP, which I thought was just tremendous. So these are the places that I would throw out. Now, if you can eat at Red, again, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I haven't been in these restaurants. I don't know what the situation is, but probably.
I was at Red 2 weeks ago, so you can.
So there you go. So a nice steak at Red would be a wonderful thing to do. I think that you want to go. You got to hit up Barrio. You got to. That's just a must. Yep. That's right there downtown. You got to have some tacos and some margs one day, maybe for a lunch. And then on game day, you want to find the perfect pre-game brunch. And right now, and the other place that you could say for dinner, which actually might be a better idea even, Red is tremendous, but Marble Room with its high ceilings might be more COVID-friendly.
I think they're.
Is it over?
I think they're.
Oh, they're done? Sad.
I think they're out.
Sad. Well, then we'll stick with Red. We know that they're still around.
While you're talking.
And then for the brunch on Sunday, Gibbe, help me real quickly. What is the name? I want to say
Fahrenheit and Tremont.
Fahrenheit and Tremont is great. And then there's the one that's attached to the hotel that was the team hotel that was right there. It's got 2 names. It's something.
It's not the Westin, is it?
It's not attached to the Westin. But it's the perfect brunch on a Sunday for a Browns game, and everybody who comes in town goes there. I'm trying to think of brunch in Cleveland. But it's 2 names. It sounds like a butcher type of a place, but it's not.
Well, Chop House has one of the great brunches of all time. Is Chop House.
I was going to say.
Chop House.
I love the Chop House brunch.
Town Hall. Oh, Ned Fox Plimpton's got to hit up Town Hall. I mean, you got to have a Town Hall stop while you're here. That would be a tremendous one as well. So that's
South Side is good.
South Side's excellent. The one I'm thinking about, though, it's like literally you could walk to the game from it. And it's a steakhouse in the basement, in the bottom floor of the hotel. It's the hotel, the Browns team hotel when they were in town, or it used to be.
Urban Farmer?
Urban Farmer. Yes, I was thinking Farmer.
There you
yes,
go.
Urban Farmer.
There you go.
Urban Farmer has a great brunch, and then you can get a Ned Fox Plimpton Bloody Mary and head right down into the game, and you're in great shape there. But so Red, Town Hall. Did you confirm the demise? Were the rumors of the demise greatly exaggerated, or are they confirmed?
You can't. You can't get reservations. So I don't know. Heard that not, but I don't know.
Okay.
I had heard that though, that
so
they were
Red,
shut down due to pandemic.
Town Hall, Barrio, and then I'd recommend Urban Farmer on Sunday for a little brunch, and then walk down into the stadium in a festively well-fed atmosphere.
So
Marble
this was
Room
the
is
most
set to
recent.
reopen Sunday, November 22nd.
All right, so that misses
Okay.
Ned Fox Plimpton.
There we go.
But I'm glad they're around. That's a very cool spot.
Yes, it is.
It's unlike
But
anything else in
yes,
Cleveland.
Okay. So I had read that it was down, and now you say at the end of
It was
in
down,
November,
but not out for the count.
Not. All right, so there you go, Ned Fox Plimpton. That's what you deserve as one of the great true friends of the show. Also, happy Veterans Day.
Yes.
And just humbled by those who have served. Many in my family have. I know you know many have
Same.
as well. Many of our great friends, the great Previtts
Yes.
over there, doing God's work, and just humbled by that and the true heroes that they are. And we do the show in homage to those who have served and who continue to serve. And as you and I have talked about, one of the most comforting things that we get is when you hear from people who are overseas who listen to this show, and it provides some sense of normalcy, and there are a lot of them. It's just one of the coolest, most humbling experiences you can have. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Yes, and we obviously owe a huge debt of gratitude to all who have served, and then for, as you mentioned, for us personally, with our guy Previtts, who is, we wish him a safe and speedy return, and the generosity he has shown us, and of course former Secretary of the Navy Thomas Modly, and the generosity he has shown us. So we are very, very much plugged in and tied in and feel for and are grateful for all those who have served. So absolutely.
All right. Well done there on all fronts. Time for the OBM Hot Topics. Ohio Business Machine, preferred copier provider of your Cleveland Browns. Of all the X's and O's for your office, call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. Pretty big news here this morning. We were waiting on this, and we got the good news. Baker Mayfield activated from the reserve COVID-19 list. He is game on for Sunday. Per coach, everyone will be at practice today, so a very, very good sign there. But Baker activated and back. And so this is just one of those ones, and I think you brought this up yesterday, Z. Holy smokes, like if this thing would have happened, if we wouldn't have had a bye week, Baker would have missed Sunday.
Yeah, would have missed a game. Absolutely. And instead, he's not even going to miss a practice. Of course, he missed Monday, but I'm saying if it were a normal game week, you practice Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. He's not going to miss anything from his normal routine. Was able to obviously participate remotely. But this is huge news. And, yeah, you dodged an absolute bullet in that you're right. If this all came down on, I believe it was a Saturday that it came down on.
Yeah.
You're not playing on Sunday. And we've seen it happen to the 49ers, where multiple people were not able to play after what turned out to be a false positive.
Right. Yeah. So this is really, really good news, and you'll hear from Coach on Baker a little bit later in the program. Obviously, this is going to continue to be a struggle, getting these games in and getting them played. There are 4 cancellations, postponements in the Southeastern Conference this weekend. 4 games can't be playing. Pretty remarkable what is happening in the NFL. So far, so good. You've been able to play most of them. You've had to rearrange some schedules a little bit, but by and large, the NFL has just pushed forward and gotten these games in week after week after week as we head into Week 10. On the Houston front, of course, that is the opponent this week. We will meet the Texans a little bit later in the program. Head coach Romeo Crennel, of course, who is here, said today that running back David Johnson will probably not practice today due to concussion protocol. Look, they don't have a run game. They don't.
They're last in the NFL.
They're the worst, yeah. And the mirage of him in that opener, it's interesting because for whatever reason, I've kept him on my fantasy team, and every week it projects like 12 points for him, and every week I'm like, well, no, not going to do that. It hasn't since week 1, and it was a mirage because that has the potential to go down as just a really lopsided trade right there. The fact that they actually gave up something to get Johnson for Hopkins, and they added to it to acquire Johnson, and they're in a tough spot when it comes to running the football. We'll see our former friend Duke Johnson, who we both love. He will be back here in Cleveland, and could be really their only threat on the ground on Sunday.
Yeah, and he's struggled this year, averaging just 2.9 yards per carry, and you mentioned their running game in general has really it hasn't been great, and so they are the 32nd ranked run offense in the NFL, and that's buoyed, by the way, by Deshaun Watson, who has 200 of their 700 yards. That means in 8 games, their running backs have accounted for basically 500 yards. Not great.
Jeez. No.
Not great.
That's 300 less than Dalvin Cook has by himself.
That's only 100 more than Nick Chubb has, and Nick Chubb hasn't played since the beginning of the Dallas game.
Yeah, I mean they're the thing with them, and we'll get into this when we meet them a little later. They are a one-trick pony offensively, but it's a really good trick.
It's a great
trick.
So
it's one of those things that you're really going to have to deal with, and you look forward to it. One other bit of news here on our front: Odell Beckham Jr. did have ACL surgery yesterday on that left knee. Dr. James Andrews performed the surgery. Beckham is expected to be ready for the 2021 season. Did Dr. James Andrews, is he the originator of citing who did the surgery?
That's a great question, but every major surgery, especially an ACL that I've ever heard of, was done by Dr. James Andrews down in Birmingham, Alabama.
ACL.
All of them.
Tommy John.
Yep.
Tommy John, ACL, anything. He's the guy. He's been doing it for 20 years. He apparently is the only one in the country that does it because he does every pro athlete. He does their ACL. He does their Tommy John.
Yeah.
He's been doing it for a long time. I've never heard another surgeon cited when an athlete has a surgery. Never.
No, you do not.
So I don't know if he made it part of the deal. I think he's very, very well regarded. But I would imagine that his business has boomed because of this, because he is the only surgeon I can ever recall who has been cited when he does a surgery on an athlete. I can't think of another one.
It's wild. I mean, he has got the market covered. It's what anybody who, sometimes people wait, they say it's for the swelling to go down. Other times they're waiting just for Dr. Andrews to be able to get them into his facility.
That's amazing. I think he's the Auburn and Alabama team doctors as well. So fascinating stuff there, and he is certainly a legend. We'll be joined by another legend coming up next. The great John McClain of the Houston Chronicle will join us. You have that to look forward to, which is very, very nice. Before we get to that, are you a sports fan looking for a part-time weekend job? Get into the action at First Energy Stadium, home of your Cleveland Browns. Wes is now hiring for part-time event staff and security. Apply online at weshiring.com. Coming up next, we go behind enemy lines. John McClain going to join us, the General. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Rumpke Waste and Recycling, family-owned and operated since 1932. They've been in business 87 years, keeping neighborhoods clean and green. Their customers, employees, and communities are all part of the family. Visit rumpke.com to learn more. Time to go behind enemy lines, and in this case, we go to as big an expert as you're going to find. The great John McClain of the Houston Chronicle joining us on the Fifth Third Money Line. John, thank you so much for taking the time. Let's just start with this, because we look at this Houston team and we go, wow, a lot of firepower, elite quarterback play, but just 2 wins in there against the Jaguars. And so you say, how did we get here with this franchise where it was so bright a couple of years ago and now seems so wayward? You've been here every step of the way. How did we get here?
The Texans, going back to the last game of last season, other than playing Jacksonville this season, they trailed by double digits in every game. When Bill O'Brien was fired after the 0-4 start, they had lost 6 of 7, and they had trailed by double digits in every one of those games. And the franchise was clearly going in the opposite direction. It's what is amazing to me, and I wrote about this today, and I still can't figure it out. Last season, the Texans were 9th in the NFL rushing. They averaged 125 yards a game. This season, they are 31st in rushing, and they average 86 yards a game. They had the same offensive linemen, the same tight ends back. The only difference, Carlos Hyde, running back Bill O'Brien, let get away because he didn't want to pay him. That's the only difference. But a guy like Duke Johnson, Duke last year averaged 4.9 yards a carry. This year he's averaging 2.8. Duke didn't just go down the toilet in one off season. So they got a lot of players on both sides of the ball that played well in the past, including last year when they won the AFC South for the 4th time in 5 years, beat Buffalo in the playoffs before they choked the 24-point lead at Kansas City in the divisional round. And they got a lot of guys who just aren't playing as well as they have in the past, and nobody can figure out why.
John, in a lot of those questions, you mentioned some of the guys on the offense, I would imagine, are on the defensive side of the ball, where this team has really, really struggled. They've been bad against the run. They haven't really been able to generate a ton of pressure on the opposing quarterbacks. What do you make of this defense that was for a long time kind of a hallmark for this Texans team?
2 years ago, when Romeo Crennel was his defensive coordinator, they gave up 82 yards a game rushing. Through the first 9 games last year, they gave up 84. And then all of a sudden, they underwent this transformation. And since then, over the last 9 games last year, counting 2 in the playoffs, and the first 8 games this year, they've given up 165. So their run defense has been awful.
Yeah.
And the only player they've had who's played consistently well on defense this season is J.J. Watt. And without any other player, he gets so much attention from offensive coordinators when it comes to keeping him away from the quarterback. And they've got other good defensive players like inside linebacker Zach Cunningham, outside linebacker Whitney Merciless had 7.5 sacks last year, safety Justin Reed, cornerback Bradley Roby. They've got some guys that have played and have played well. But by and large, most of them have been woefully inconsistent. It doesn't matter if it's against the run or the pass. They can't stop anybody. I just watched them allow 304 yards to Jake Luton. We're talking about Jake Luton, a 6th-round pick of the Jaguars, who had not thrown one pass this season, starts against the Texans, 73-yard touchdown on the first series, 304 yards overall, had his 2-point conversion pass. Had he connected on it, they would have forced overtime against the Jaguars, the team they beat 30-14 earlier in the season. So their defense has been bad from top to bottom, and I would bet money. Number one, I do not understand how the odds makers could have the Browns a 3-point favorite. It's like they didn't watch the Jaguars game. And when they see this run defense, and you think about the Browns averaging 150 yards and 5 yards a carry, I'll be shocked if they don't get 200 yards.
Yeah, and with Nick Chubb coming back, that's certainly the recipe for us, John. From your mouth to God's ears up here. The one thing that has been consistent has been Deshaun Watson, who in the last 6 games, I don't think he's had a quarterback rating lower than 109, and appears to be the great player that he's already been. What have you seen from him this year? And in terms of just his view of all of this, because when you draft a player like that and you have a player like that, you draft him and you pay him to be a leader, to be the centerpiece of the franchise. He's been those things. You mentioned the 4 out of 5 division titles and all of that. And then this thing has kind of crumbled around him. Where's his head right now?
His head's where it always should be, up leading everybody else. He's played great. He couldn't be better to deal with. He's on a pace for career highs and touchdowns, touchdown to interception ratio, yards, average per attempt. He's second in the league right now. He's been phenomenal. His completion 6 games in a row with a rating of at least 109, and he hasn't thrown an interception in 3 games and 4 or 5 against Jacksonville because they can't run at all, and they lost their leading rusher, David Johnson, who I doubt is going to play against the Browns, so you'll get to see Duke in his own company be the starter, take most of the snaps, but he ran 10 times for 50 yards. That's the most of the season, and the reason is early on they want him to stay in the pocket as much as possible, and he's kind of like Houdini, escaping the rush. He has to do that a lot. He's doing better at throwing the ball away and going down instead of taking sacks, especially recently. In the last 6 games, starting with Pittsburgh, including Green Bay and Tennessee, has 15 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. His receivers, Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks, are on pace for 1,000 yards. It'll be the first time in team history they'd had 2,000-yard receivers, and they like to throw the ball down the field. So their passing game is all they've got. Romeo Cornell talked to us on Monday. You can't be a one-player team. Well, that's great. Everybody knows it. But if you can't run it and you can't stop the run of the pass, you got nothing else to hang your hat on. So the only way they got a chance to win games, because they don't force many turnovers either, is if he can put a lot of points on the board, and that's a lot of pressure on a quarterback who's 24 years old.
It is, but he certainly seems up to the task and always has since he's come into this league, a very special player. Now, you mentioned the receivers. Will Fuller, he scored in 6 straight. Cooks has scored in 3 of the last 4. You mentioned both of them on pace for over 1,000 yards. Was the talk of Will Fuller perhaps being shipped at the deadline? Were there any legs to that, John? And what do you make of, his tremendous play? And I think the thing that really comes with it is his ability to stay on the field. He's always been good. This is the first year he's actually playing every time that they go out there.
That's what's so frustrating about it for Texans fans. He's been hurt every year. The most games he played was 14 when he was a rookie in 2016. And it's funny how sometimes guys in the last year of their contracts, they stay healthy. Fuller's on a pace for 1,280 yards, 17.8 yards catch, and 12 touchdowns. And they don't have first and second round picks. Bill O'Brien traded them to Miami. They got left tackle Laramie Tunsil, who's been great, and receiver Kenny Stills, who's a valuable reserve. And they thought at the time those would be low picks, and they were last year, 28th in the first round. They thought it would be this year, and now Miami's going to get a windfall from that trade, playing as well as the Dolphins are with first and second round picks from the Texans. So the passing game hadn't been the issue here. They've been able to throw the ball. They've been able to move it. Problem is when they get down close to the goal line, even though Duke Johnson had a 1-yard touchdown run Sunday, they don't have anybody can run the ball in unless they can find a free agent like they did with Arian Foster, which they need to do in off season. That's their main need on offense. They need a right guard and they need a running back, and the defense needs to be torn up and built back up. But their receivers have played well. Fuller's played well. They put a lot of pressure on the secondary because Fuller and Brandon Cooks and Kenny Stills all ran in the low 4.3s at their combine. Randall Cobb, who plays in the slot, only ran a 4.44. And so that's a lot of pressure, and teams get a lot of pressure on Watson. I expect Myles Garrett, if he stays healthy, he's going to want to have a big day with all his fans down in this area, that Myles could make Watson's life miserable.
You talk about, the line hasn't been able to generate the push up front in the ground game. They've got to find somebody who can run. How has this line been in pass protection? I know Deshaun scrambles on over 6% of his dropbacks, the highest rate in the NFL. He, as you said, he's like Houdini. He's run for about 200 yards this year. But how is this line, and where are the weaknesses on this line, certainly in pass protection?
The interior, the tackles play well. Laramie Tunsil's really good. Titus Howard, last year's number one pick, made the all-rookie team. He playing well. Their interior guys are not. And their center, Nick Martin, played his best season last season. He's been mediocre at best. They cannot get an inside push. As far as pass protection, Watson likes to hold the ball, and he creates sacks, but he also gets away from sacks. But one of the reasons they like to throw the ball down the field is because he likes to hold it. Now, against Jacksonville, he threw a crossing route to Brandon Cooks, who picked up two great blocks, turned the left corner, and he was gone, 57 yards. Will Fuller, he took 3 steps back, lofted it down the right sideline, rookie cornerback. C.J. Henderson turned the wrong way. Fuller adjusted to the ball and went 77 yards. So they can get it down the field, but they also seldom do you see Deshaun Watson just drop back and hold it with a clean pocket.
Wow. Great John McClain on with us. Sir, I'll get you out of here on this one. I know you got a lot to get to. In terms of the future of this franchise, obviously Deshaun Watson, you build around him. You mentioned some of the weapons that they have, some of the tools they had. Who leads it? What's the next direction? Bill O'Brien had so much power in that organization for so long. Who's next? What will they look to try to bring in there? What type of person?
They're gonna hire a general manager. And the general manager is going to be on their committee to hire the new coach. All the usual suspects, like Eric Bieniemy, would be a candidate, considering they have Watson, receivers, tight ends, offensive tackles, and they can get a running back. It would be an enticing job for a coach who wants to come in with a lot of talent on offense. Defense, that's a different story. But it's going to start with a GM. I don't know if it'll be a former GM, because as you guys know, those guys don't get recycled like head coaches. Right. I would imagine, I'm just guessing, that I don't know, that they'll get a general manager. It'll be somebody who's been a successful personnel director with another organization. And I think they'll interview a lot of people. One of the reasons they fired O'Brien when they did is there's guys out there that y'all know, like Thomas Dimitrov, John Dorsey. I'd interview people like that. I'd want to know Reggie McKenzie. I'd want to know Alonzo Highsmith. I'd want to know what those guys think. And when you can interview them, if you can interview them now, do it and find out if there's these common denominators among all these guys you're interviewing. I don't think you can interview too many and have too much information.
John, you're simply the best, sir. We thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you. I thought you were going to say second best to Tony Grossi, but thank you very much.
We were not.
Yeah, well ahead of Grossi.
That's right.
I'll take that any day of the week.
Thanks, the great John McClain of the Houston Chronicle. On the Fifth Third Money Line, a reminder, all guests who appear on CBD do so via the Fifth Third Money Line. Fifth Third Bank making Cleveland Browns daily a Fifth Third bet. He's an institution.
Totally.
He's an institution.
Legend.
Yeah.
Absolute
Yep.
legend.
And that was, just for you listening, the stuff that he had from a statistical standpoint at the ready on anything that was asked of him. You do that. But there are very few people that have that. We have a lot of go behind enemy lines, and it's broad strokes, which is fine. I mean, that's fine. And he can do that too. But just from the standpoint of having all of that statistical recollection at the ready, I mean, we don't do a pre-interview. He doesn't know what we're going to ask him about.
No.
He had it all.
Full,
he had it all. That was incredible.
Full control of the information relating to the Houston Texans, and also will not sugarcoat what he believes is going on with the Texans. His Twitter, if you're a football fan, it's a good follow, just period. But when the Texans are not playing well mid-game, his Twitter is really dynamic.
Really quite strong.
Oh, quite.
No
words are minced.
None. No. That's an interesting job in that I think that there's a feeling from people, who are in, do what we do, and you say, well, gosh, they don't have their first and second round pick. Yeah, but you got the dude. Like, you've got the quarterback. You don't have to go find that. You've got tackles. You've got a bunch of talent on the outside. You've got J.J. Watt. Yeah, you've got to fill some holes, and you don't have a first and a second, and that's tough. but you've got the guy.
This team was up 24 on the eventual Super Bowl champion in the divisional round of the playoffs a year ago.
Yeah.
Second quarter, Gibbe said. Don't be afraid to hit your button and use your microphone, Gibbe. You have all the controls right at your disposal.
Hop in here. The water's warm, Gibby.
Yeah,
Jump on in.
Come on in.
Get that Speedo on. Jump on in, Gibby. Nothing to see here. Water's warm.
No.
Cool, wet November day, but jump on in. Yeah, no, I mean, it's a really interesting job, and I think some of those people that he mentioned would be very interested. I could see Alonzo Highsmith wanting to really be a part of that organization with his time with the Oilers.
Yes.
That makes a ton of sense. I don't know about general manager, but head of personnel, we obviously had Zoe here, and
sure.
I think that would be a great spot for him, to go home to the state of Texas and somehow be a part of that organization going forward. But that's a really attractive job. Sometimes, in this business, you draft picks are so valuable, but sometimes I think they're overrated. Like, you've got the quarterback there. Like, the rest of it, you sort out. Of course you want your ones, but look how hard it is to find a guy like Deshaun Watson.
Of course.
They don't have to go looking. They got him.
No, they've got that, and now what they need to do is be very judicious and be very smart with the resources available to them to surround him with a supporting cast that allows him to have the success that he wants. And it sounds like they need to pay a lot of attention to defense. I mean, John was very kind, but just for those, and we'll meet the Texans in full, but here are their defensive rankings. Points against, 29th. Total defense yards, 30th. Rush defense, 32nd. This is a team that should be vulnerable to what it is that we do well.
Yes.
And that's the path.
Yeah.
We know our path to victory. This is a game that sets up for it. And not only in this case does what we do well match up with what they don't, it also has the double benefit of, if I'm Kevin Stefanski in this one, let's run it. And let's just take our time. I think the fewer possessions in this game, absolutely the better. We'll just
I would love nothing more than a Baker 16-21 game.
Yeah.
22 carries Chubb, 18 carries Hunt. Like, churn it.
Churn it.
Churn.
200 plus on
the
ground.
I don't want that kid. I don't want him on the field, man. He's in his fourth year in the league. He's only 25. So that's what he's all about. He's special, and as John McClain said, they've got weapons, especially on the outside, a lot of speed. All right, you'll hear from our coach, Kevin Stefanski, up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. If your game plan for this season includes buying or selling a home, Howard Hanna Real Estate Services has you covered. Visit howardhanna.com/GoBrowns today. Our head coach, Kevin Stefanski, met with the media here within the last hour, covered a lot of topics, including Baker Mayfield. Let's have a listen.
They're
Both down.
field today. Got to have a great week of practice. I think got a really good football team coming into our building. Starting with their offense, Deshaun Watson, obviously an outstanding football player, explosive, makes plays late in the down. Their yards per play is very high. Really potent attack. On defense, J.J. Watt, an extremely disruptive player, as everyone knows. He can line up anywhere, so everybody will have an opportunity to try to block him. He's got very long arms, gets his hands on footballs. Special teams, they play very, very hard, have a really good returner. So we've got our work cut out for us there. Got a ton of respect for Coach Cornell and his staff, and we're anticipating this to be quite the challenge, like I said. With that, I'll take any questions.
So, Coach, Baker's a full go then, cleared and ready to practice?
Correct.
Great. And then in terms of Nick, how did he handle Monday? I know you said you wanted to kind of assess him and see how he did coming off that.
Yeah, he's progressing, Tom. I think we'll continue to use each of these days to move him along and then make a determination Friday on where he is.
Yeah, Coach, if you can just elaborate a little bit more on Deshaun Watson, what makes him so good, and even though their record isn't good this year, he's having a really nice season, and he's gotten a little bit hot lately, I believe.
Yeah, I think he's a tremendous football player. You saw what he was able to accomplish in college. They won the division last year, won a playoff game. He makes plays, like I said, late in the down. He makes them on time. He's a threat to run it. He can make all the throws down the field. So it's readily apparent when you watch the tape how talented he is.
Hey, Kevin, what was the focus of the coaching staff and your meetings with Baker over the bye? Just maybe what he needs to get better at, the strengths he saw in the first half?
Yeah, I think AVP and the quarterbacks had some great meetings over the bye week, and then even on Monday. We kind of used Monday as that bonus day to rehash some of the things that we did well. I think Baker would tell you there's moments where he was really good and moments that he wants to get better. And I think that's just a great focus for our guys moving forward. We can help him. I know that. We can help him for sure in some of the design, some of the play calls. But I think he's ready to ascend.
Do you ever get used to sort of the grind that this season presents, getting tested every day, dealing with these protocols? And then also, have you learned anything about your team with how they've responded, especially with this week going into the more intense protocols?
Well, I think we're all used to it, Dan. It's not, we've talked about embracing the suck. It's not a lot of fun sometimes having the thing stuck up your nose every morning. But by the way, they do a great job, though, the ladies out there. But it is what it is. That's what we're dealing with. So, I applaud the guys from that perspective of moving on. It is the classic. It is what it is. The intensive protocols, you're wearing masks. We're already wearing masks. We're meeting virtually. We had been meeting virtually. So that's 2020. And I think the guys are understand that's the mentality of whatever it takes. You got to find a way.
Hey, Kevin, when you're talking about Deshaun, his escapability, how do you deal with that as a defense, either in a game plan or just when it happens, the fact that he seems to be able to get out of any situation?
Yeah, we've all seen the play, in the playoffs versus the Bills. I mean, he's a special talent when it comes to that. And you just have to stay true to your rush integrity, and then you really have to get as many people around him as possible. If it's one person, it's hard to bring him down. You have got to have multiple people around him and staying disciplined in your rush.
Yeah, Coach, when you're game planning for a J.J. Watt, does he still strike that same fear into a team the way that Myles Garrett does to the opponent? And what are you seeing from J.J.?
I think definitely Mary Kay. He's a very, very unique player in that his combination of size, strength, athleticism, quickness, power is really unrivaled. And he gets those long arms up.
1 minute.
That's balls in the air. He's got, I want to see, his 25 forced fumbles in his career maybe. He's a very, very disruptive player. He lines up all over the formation, so you can't key in on where he's going to be. So I have a huge amount of respect for what he has done in his career.
And I know it was only a few snaps against the Raiders, but the one receiver I don't think we really asked you about was Taywan Taylor. And do you envision a bigger role for him, or kind of what do you see, in terms of what the second half of the season could mean for him?
Yeah, I think we'll see how it goes.
30.
He's certainly somebody that has a good skill set with our entire room. I think you see the wide receivers in general, a bunch of different players, some bigger, some smaller, some faster, some quicker.
Stand by.
That can really run. He's made plays in practice consistently, so we'll kind of see how his role evolves.
You're up.
All right, good stuff from Coach there on a wide array of issues. And you think about the self-scouting, Z, that took place here over the bye week, and you think about the fixing what ails you, right? Well, some of it offensively comes in the fact of you're healthy. So Nick Chubb, Wyatt Teller, Austin Hooper, that's a big part of what you're always going to be offensively. Unfortunately, you'll never have Odell Beckham Jr. back, but those other three guys are coming back. Defensively, it's how do you get off the field?
Yep.
And that has to be a major focus of the bye week.
It was focus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. How do we perform better on the money downs? Because we've been pretty good in the red zone. We've been very good in terms of turnover generation. We've been good at getting to the quarterback, thanks in large part to Myles Garrett. We have not been good at getting off the field on 3rd and 4th downs. And so that's one of the things that I'm kind of most excited about for this game. Not only do I believe the Browns are going to be able to go out there and take care of their business against the Texans, and I will say, my personal feelings as we get closer have started to get better and better and dive into it and watch this. They're just so bad on defense that
so bad.
It is not surprising to me that despite how good they are on offense, that they have not had a lot of success this year because they can't control the game. The game is being dictated to them week in and week out because of their inadequacies on defense. And so that's a formula that has been a very successful one for our team. So I'm excited to see that. But really, in addition to that and seeing Nick Chubb back and offensively, I want to see what changes were made. How were these things addressed? What are we doing differently? And is that a personnel change? Are there changes on the back end of our defense? Are there changes in the middle of our defense? Are there going to be new schematic things that we employ on these money downs? That's what I'm most interested to see. Because when you have, and they're not going to show it all in 1 week, but when you have this 2-week off period and you've dedicated so much of that time to understanding how to improve your deficiencies, I'm curious to see what those improvements are and what they look like and what kind of success they have. Because if you can put together one of your better defensive performances of the year this week, you've got to feel pretty good about what you're going to be able to do the rest of the way. You look at our schedule the rest of the way, there is a pretty legitimate case to be made that this is the most explosive offense you face the rest of the way. Most explosive, yeah. I mean, it's a one-dimensional, but let's do this. All right, so they are I'll say this. Their ability to throw the football at the level they throw it is in the same category as Baltimore can run it and as Tennessee can run it. So they're at that level in one dimension. So those other teams can do the other things relatively well, and they can't run it. But their ability to throw it is as good as anybody in the league not named Mahomes and Wilson. Yes.
Like Mahomes, Wilson, Watson. Throw it, that's the way you do it.
Yeah, and in some ways they're kind of like the Falcons, right? In the sense that the Falcons, at least,
that's a lot
Gurley's
of parallels.
Running it decently, and he's able to finish drives in the end zone, which is something the Texans haven't had. But that's a team that moves the ball up and down the field by throwing it to Julio and Ridley and Hayden Hurst and Russell Gage and the other receivers that have been mixing
Frankly,
in.
It doesn't matter.
Right. It doesn't matter nearly as much. So that, to me, they're in that category. Now, the Steelers, I think if they said we're going to throw it 100 times a game, I think they could be. I think their trio of Juju, Deontay Johnson, and Claypool is absolutely bonkers. They don't do that. But this team is as dangerous and certainly as vertically oriented as any we've seen. And I would say, the two probably most complete offenses the Browns have to face the rest of the way are going to be Pittsburgh and Tennessee because they can both run it and throw it. Tennessee's throwing attack does not get nearly the credit it deserves when A.J. Brown is healthy and Tannehill playing at that level. But this is just in terms of a flat-out scary, can zip it up and down the field. This is the scariest offense that we'll face. And frankly, I'm more scared of teams that can throw it than run it anyway. That's just kind of my personal bias.
Yeah, I mean, they are – that's why when we were talking about – you talk about the teams that you say, geez, I mean, the two teams with poor records who you really want no part of just because their ability to spin it are Atlanta. That's the other team. That team and this team. They can just do it at a very, very high level. And that's why that job's an interesting one, because they have a lot of those pieces going forward. And for us, coming off the bye week, we have had the glaring weakness in the back end where we've given up big chunk plays and can't get off the field on 3rd and 4th down. You said it was, priority 1, 2, and 3 to get that sorted out this bye week. What does that look like? You said it. It's fascinating to try to wrap your mind around what they did in this bye week to shore that up. And that's the thing when we bring up some interesting things here. When you think about, we've talked about how many bad teams there are in this league. There's a difference between bad teams and teams with bad records who are really talented. Yes. And this team is one of those. It's interesting when you hear from John McClain, and he talked about how, they all of a sudden they can't run it. Well, what happened? Last year they could run it, now they can't run it. Same offensive line, can't run it. Doesn't make any sense. So why does that happen? Last year they were respectable defensively. Now they're terrible defensively. So what happened? Those are things that you have to say. And my guess is these same conversations are being had in Minnesota, in Atlanta, in Detroit, among other places where you have bad records that don't represent the Chargers, where you have bad records that just don't represent the talent on the roster.
It's interesting because I think right now of the teams you mentioned, nobody would be pumped to see Minnesota or Atlanta on their schedule.
No.
The Chargers,
not the way Cook's running it, not the way Ryan throws it.
The Chargers' ability to lose games, which so many people thought was a Phillip Rivers issue kind of towards the tail end of his career, and is clearly not, is just stunning. No. But this is a talented Texans team, and this is a team that you cannot take lightly. Now, as John McClain pointed out, they have put themselves in big holes. And if the Browns take a double-digit lead against this team, I will feel very good about our chances. If it follows the formula that all non-Jacksonville Jaguars-Texans games have followed this year, that would be a good thing for the Cleveland Browns. And I feel like this is almost one of those games that I know analytically it makes no sense, so I don't expect that we would do it, but this is just me. Sometimes you just got to go with your gut, I would love to see us take the ball, and I would love to see us go on a 15-play, 75-yard drive where we grind them into oblivion on the ground and punch it in for a touchdown and then let them say, at that point you could maybe have them start thinking about the flight home.
Yep. Yeah, that's the recipe, and it's the perfect time to get Nick Chubb back. Chubb and Hunt and Teller and Hooper and everything he provides. There is a cleared roadmap. I also think, though, that and this is why you have to be careful with team, and we'll get into this more in the matchup. This is also a team that has the talent to beat anybody on their schedule because of that quarterback. And there's no limit to, I'm not limiting that to teams of certain records. This is a team that lost to Tennessee 42-36, went toe-to-toe. They lost to the Steelers 28-21. They lost to the Chiefs in Week 1 34-20, so that's at least a 2-score win. But in terms of the last 6, where they've really played at a pretty high level the whole way, the only time they've lost by more than a score is against the Packers. They lost 35-20. But other than that, it's a 1-score loss all the way across the board, and they can play with anybody, and it's because of Watson and the level he plays at. So even if they get behind, he allows for quick strikes, Fuller deep, Cooks deep. It allows for quick strikes right back into it. You have to be relentless in your approach, if you're us, to grind this thing away on the ground. And the weather is not looking great, so it should fit that bill in terms of exactly what we did to the Raiders. What the Raiders did to us, we ought to be able to do to them.
Absolutely. You go on a couple 8-minute drives in the second half, and all of a sudden the second half is over and the game is over. And that is the recipe. And you know what? You get an opportunity with 2 weeks that I'm sure, is kind of stuck in the craw of many Browns players that was an environment that should have favored us, a matchup that should have favored us, and we got bullied. And now we need to go out and we need to be the bullies. And you have an opportunity to do that in an emphatic way, because this game is about preventing back-to-back losses. This game is about going 3 games over 500 to be 6-3, which is massive compared to 5-4. A huge difference. Huge difference. Yeah. This is a critical game for this Browns team to come out and establish their identity, and this is who we're going to be. The weather's only getting worse. We're not playing really anymore. The only game you probably have that would be, quote-unquote, a good weather game left on your schedule for sure is Jacksonville. That's it. So let's go out there. Let's get nasty as it gets nasty.
Yep.
And that's where, if you don't mind me interjecting.
Yeah, no, we welcome it.
I asked for it earlier.
I know.
You said
but
no.
Now I got something that I remember the last time they played here was 2014, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It was snowing sideways. It was freezing cold. It was about 40-mile-an-hour winds, okay? Here we thought this game favors us all the way. Here comes this warm weather dome team.
Mm-hmm.
We're in great shape. And J.J. Watt came out in a tank top and the shortest of shorts and worked out for an hour beforehand and set the tone, and they came out and punched us in the face, and we never had an answer. And we can't have a repeat of what happened 2 weeks ago because the weather bothered us, and it should never bother us. That should never be an excuse here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We practice. You're gonna fight in the North Atlantic. You got to train in the North Atlantic. That's the way that thing's got to go. All right, we will meet the Texans coming up at the top of the hour. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Snapple on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Refinance or purchase your home at Union Home Mortgage. The process is simple and straightforward. Loan officer keeps you in the loop all the way to the end zone. Mortgage promises kept. Union Home Mortgage Corp. NMLS 2229 is an equal housing lender. It is time to meet the Houston Texans, nay, Oilers. Oh, what could be?
Boy.
What could have been? What could have been? You love this name. Your favorite name in the NFL.
It's quite possibly the worst ever. It really might be the worst named team ever. Like, at least Orlando Magic, you can understand they were going for the Magic Kingdom, Disney in Orlando. They at least had a tie into that. The Miami Heat, like, can you feel the heat of South Beach? South Beach brings the heat. The Houston Texans, the worst. There's a sketch on Saturday Night Live called The Californians, because it's like, could you imagine if there was a football? We've done this before, but if it was the Oakland Californians, no, it's absurd.
Crazy. It's crazy when you point it that way. I think the combination of it and the branding, it does look like if you were like a creative team on Madden is what it looks like. The way they've done their uniforms from the beginning, it's always just been very, very plain, considering certainly what their history was. And the fact that the Tennessee franchise won't give them the Oilers is crazy. Like, what are you going to do with it? You're not going to do anything with it. Let them have it.
Why do they care?
And I don't know. Spite, I guess. Probably spite.
It's a spite store.
I mean, it is a spite store. The only pushback I'll have is that of all of the places that I've been, in terms of the states, Texas is a place where they identify themselves as Texans. Like, people, I don't know anybody in Ohio who walks around going, I'm an Ohioan. I don't know anybody when I grew up in Montana who's like, I'm a Montanan. Nobody did that. Nobody walks around Florida and be like, yeah, we're Floridians. Yet people I know who live in Texas and the time I've spent in Texas identify themselves as Texans. And I think it comes from that Alamo thing. It comes from the fact that they're, quote, the Republic of Texas and all of that. But there is a little bit of that I can understand why they went there. I'm with you. There's a million things they could have taken that would have made more sense. But, I mean, even the Houston Gamblers, which was a USFL franchise they had, there's some cool things you could have done there. But you should have got the Oilers is what you should have been.
Of course. And it's not like the Houston Texans were the first professional sports team ever in Texas. No. That means all these other teams went through all these other names and never arrived on the Houston Texans.
Furthermore, they're not
Dallas
the first Texans.
Or San Antonio Texans.
Right. Well, there were the Dallas Texans.
In what?
The Dallas Texans became the Kansas City Chiefs.
That's right. Still a bad name.
So they're right.
They went at now defunct.
Someone has been the Texans before. Someone's been it before. They should be the Oilers. That's what you should do. The NFL ought to step in and make that so and say, look, you want to be the Oilers? You're the Oilers. Let's go.
Yeah, the Astros, you got the Rockets. You're playing into that whole NASA thing. You could have come up with another variation on that. I'd rather have them be the Houston Spacemen, for crying out loud.
There was we did this. There was something with the oil derricks. I remember that what was it?
The Roughnecks.
Roughnecks. Yeah,
that would be great.
Yeah, there was some of that. Yeah,
or
the
even
Oilers
the Houston
is the correct answer.
Barons, the Oil Barons. That would be great. The Houston Oil Barons. And then stop us from using this logo that looks similar to the Houston Oilers logo. Stop us.
Right. Yeah. All right. Let's meet him. What do you got, Z? Deshaun, some talent on the outside, not a lot else.
2-6, 2-6 as we talked about, but some real talent. Deshaun Watson, as we mentioned, playing at an incredibly high level so far this year, 2,376 yards passing, 17 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, quarterback rating of 109, completing 68% of his passes. He has been great. You talk about premier talent on the outside. Will Fuller, he's over 500 yards receiving so far this year, 590, 6 touchdowns he's scored in 6 straight games. Cooks, over 500 yards, which puts him on pace for 1,000, as McClain pointed out. And over the last 3 weeks, Cooks is averaging about 90 yards a game and has a touchdown in 3 of the last 4. So these two have scored in 3 of the last 4 games. Both of them. They've got some good tight ends, familiar names. Darren Fells has gotten in the end zone 3 times. Pharaoh Brown is playing there. They have a young kid, Jordan Akins, who I think is a nice talent, who's been a little bit banged up. Their running backs, David Johnson likely out, Duke Johnson in. We know what a good pass catcher Duke is, a good block. He kind of does it all. His yards per carry are the lowest of his career right now, 2.8. This guy, he's always around 5. I imagine that they will get that figured out as the season progresses. But this is a game in which I'm sure he will be highly motivated, and he will likely be the featured back for them. Their line has some good players, but as John McClain said, they have struggled in certain things. And so you look at this line, Laramie Tunsil has got a 91.2 pass blocking grade at Pro Football Focus. That's blue. That is elite. Absolutely elite. Tyus Howard on the other side, he's given up 24 pressures. It would not surprise me at all to see Myles Garrett in this game work a lot against the right tackle, Tyus Howard, as opposed to the left tackle, Laramie Tunsil. He mentioned the middle of that line where they have really, really struggled, and that is very true. Zach Fulton at guard. This is somebody the Browns must exploit. You mentioned the center, Nick Martin, but I think Zach Fulton, who has really, this is a guy who's a 6th-round pick back in 2014. He became a full-time starter the last couple of years. He was a starter in Kansas City even for a while, but he's having a rough year. Typically a very good pass blocker. This year he has not. He's at the right guard. So the Browns, I would imagine, are going to generate a lot of pressure coming off of that right side, working against Howard and working against Zach Fulton. They have combined allowed 50 pressures in 8 games. That's over 6 a game from that side. That's where the Browns have to exploit this line. But offensively, they can throw it. Randall Cobb, he's catching 75% of his targets, on pace for about 700 yards. He's dangerous in the middle of the field. He's the guy who converts a lot of third downs for them. So that's them on offense. Defensively, boy, J.J. Watt is good. Everybody else has frankly been dreadful. Now, Bradley Roby's been a good cover corner for them, but other than that, they have been awful. You are not last in the NFL in rushing defense. You are not bottom 4 in point and scoring and yardage defense without being flat out bad. And flat out bad is what this Texans team is so far defensively. They've got some names Whitney Merciless, Bernardrick McKinney, who's been banged up though. But Zach Cunningham is one of the worst graded linebackers in the NFL right now. Vernon Hargraves, a former first-round pick, you remember him, of the Bucks, one of the worst graded corners in the NFL right now. There are a lot of people that you can exploit on this team. There are a lot of people to attack and to target defensively. Hargraves has already given up. Listen to this, Beau. This is crazy to me. 456 yards, according to Pro Football Focus. Quarterback rating 103 when targeted. 456 yards. He's on pace to give up 1,000 yards himself as a corner. So this is a team that the Browns offense should be able to do whatever they want and dictate this game, especially running the ball.
Yeah, there's your recipe for it. It's all laid out there for you. It's pretty incredible when you think Cooks, Stills, Fuller, Cobb. So Cobb is new, right? And
Cobb's
Cooks is new.
Cooks is new as well.
Was Cooks there last year?
No.
Yeah, so last year it was Fuller, Hopkins.
And Stills. Man. And Stills is still there.
Yeah, a lot of firepower.
Tons. But they have just been, it really is kind of remarkable to think about how bad of a defense they have been. And they really have been a bad defense. Right now, Merciless is banged up. We'll get a better idea, about his availability as this week goes on. But you're talking about J.J. Watt up front. They drafted Ross Blacklock early in this draft. He has not played much at all. Their linebackers, Zach Cunningham and Tyrell Adams, have been amongst the worst coverage linebackers in the NFL, and they have them as a tandem. Roby's been good, but we told you about Hargraves and how much he has struggled. So this is a game it's great to have Hoop back. It's great to have your backs back, and just attack these linebackers. Put them in limbo all day long, because this team doesn't really get to the quarterback, and they're dreadful in coverage. And when you have that combination that you can't stop the run, you can't get to the quarterback, it's not ideal. This is not a great football team in some, but they are incredibly dangerous because of their great quarterback.
That is true. Well said. Nominations for the 2020 Helmets program now being accepted. Zenith invites you to nominate your Ohio high school to receive $25,000 worth of new Zenith helmets. Visit promotions.clevelandbrowns.com to learn more. Coming up next, as we are every single first Friday, we are joined by the legend Bernie Kosar. He will join us coming up next. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland.
You're up.
Obsessing over something like football can be a problem, but if you're obsessing over gambling, that can be downright dangerous. So do something to take your mind off it. Find a hobby, perhaps. Want more tips like this? Go to keepitfunohio.com for great ways to keep gambling fun. With that, we head out on the Fifth Third Money Line. Our great friend Bernie Kosar joining us as he does every single Wednesday. Bernie, before we get into our matchup and coming off the bye week and all of that, as you watch the league through the halfway point and you see these explosive offenses, I mean, 400 yards is common, games in the 40s common, quarterbacks completing 70% of their passes common, 110-yard quarterback ratings common, and you watch this football, one, do you think, boy, I wish I could have played in that, and how do you compare it, and how do you make sense of it? How do you put it in historical context?
Yeah, I don't want to sound like an old quarterback wanting to relive my youth, but absolutely, you want to still be part of that. And for the better, I do believe that the rules have changed. And people say, well, football's not like it used to be in terms of the sheer physicalness of it on the field. I somewhat disagree with that. There's still absolutely plenty of physical play out there. Yet it is tough now to play defense today with the inability to really intimidate the quarterback, knock guys down like they used to in the old days, where you were taking excessively more shots. But also the press coverage. In the old days, you were actually allowed to do pass interference, defensive holding. It was almost a coaching point, an art form that you were able to have contact as defensive guys. Now today, with the way they're calling the game so close, defensive guys in pass coverage are really at a massive disadvantage, and us offensive guys are taking advantage of that. Couple that with the pandemic this year and the league's transition or evolution back to the physical, straight at you running game, and us in Cleveland are taking advantage of that more so than others, where now you're having trouble in the pass game covering people, and now you've also added an element to that physical run game. Defenses are struggling, and the over has been a very predictive thing so far this year.
It certainly has been, and it's clearly an evolution of the game, and the Browns are kind of playing in some ways, as you alluded to, throwback football in the sense that, near the bottom of the league in pass attempts per game, near the top of the league in rush attempts per game. We run it as much as we throw it, which is atypical in 2020. But as we turn our attention here to this second half, Bernie, if you're the quarterback, you had the bye week, you're coming off of a loss, it sits with you for that extra week. What is it like when you finally get back on the field, back with your team to kind of ramp up as you get after taking that step away?
I think for Baker it's even a bigger step, considering that he had some of the uncertainty of the COVID protocol over this bye week, and fortunately, I think being cleared to practice today. But getting back on the field, getting your guys back together, really seeing where you're at and where the intensity is from a physical standpoint is one thing, but also from a mental standpoint. What guys got away from you from it, what guys needed to heal and from a physical standpoint, and that standpoint from the Browns' perspective of Myles Garrett and how he stands, and hopefully Nick Chubb coming back this week, and Wyatt Teller, Hooper coming back. The ability to have your guys back healthy is one thing, but from a quarterback perspective, also wanted to make sure everybody's back mentally into it. So there's no way to get that other than to get on the practice field. And a Wednesday practice like today is very comforting to see us all get out there and be able to execute like we were before the bye week.
It is great. The Browns getting healthy at this time. We're talking with Browns living legend Bernie Kosar. And Bernie, all right, we've heard this term so much, the self-scout, and we know that coaches do that, players do that. What does it mean for a quarterback? And what do you know from your time in the league do you remember? And was that a big thing back then to do this kind of self-scout, take advantage of this time to reflect on what you did well, what you need to work on, and how much of it, do you learn in this that you're able to come back and apply to see what this team looks like now that we've had the benefit of that self-scout?
Yeah, fantastic points and analysis there, Nathan. I loved to self-scout myself, and a lot of people, like probably in life, not to get over philosophical here, but really genuinely self-scouting, looking at yourself with a highly critical John Desai is easier said than done. You want to look at yourself and look at the good things and focus probably on the positive stuff. In this self-scouts, it's imperative to look at yourself in a highly critical, negative way. And that was something that was highly productive for me in terms of learning. And the bye week was a perfect time to really analyze how I am as a player and what I've been doing successfully and unsuccessfully. And I actually know that the other teams are also breaking down what I've been doing good. So during that bye week, it was imperative for me to really analyze what I'm doing good and then looking at what the defenses were going to do to try to stop us from that perspective. And then from the negative side of what I wasn't doing good, realizing that defenses are going to probably try to use those types of defenses against us in the subsequent weeks coming up post those bye weeks.
Bernie, Nathan, having a conversation, we've kind of had it throughout the week amongst ourselves and with various guests, and just a philosophical defensive question, and the idea of corners following receivers. And this was something that happened when you played in the league. Oftentimes, in the most famous example, it seemed like Deion Sanders just went wherever the best receiver was, at least in my mind's eye, the way that I remember it. We rarely see that. We have Denzel Ward as one of the best corners in the league. I'd love nothing more than to put him on Will Fuller, and I understand that maybe is there a way to do that without giving up that you're automatically in man versus zone? And what would be the reason we just don't see much of that anymore?
That's a really interesting kind of catch-22 / dilemma for a lot of people today. And Beau, to part of your point, it's so hard to disguise your man zone principles when you lock down one corner and have him follow around a receiver through the course of the game. So absolutely, teams have done that. Some teams have done that with incredible success. I looked at that, though, and I loved when that happened to me, by the way, and I really wanted that to happen to our team. And I loved playing Rod Woodson, Deion Sanders, the press coverage type guys, because during the week it gives away, in pre-snap whether it's man or zone, and that really to a team like Deshaun Watson and like the Texans, where you're able to have such success in the passing game, that does give up your pre-snap reads, but it does almost challenge you, and that makes it almost a physical mantra, man-on-man competition. And I really like that from the player perspective, but from myself, I really think that put their defense at a disadvantage and gave us offensively, because I would be able to understand those coverages and then get us into the right place to take advantage of that.
So to kind of follow up on that and have you be able to get us and educate us, which is what I think we all love about this segment so much, in addition to hearing your story. So could you be, if let's say we're a team that we play, and I think this is true, we play a lot of man and we play a lot of cover 3. So if those are your two base defenses, could you just make sure you had Denzel on the side of the field with Fuller without necessarily giving too much away pre-snap? And sometimes you'd show a pre-snap press look and then drop off into your cover 3. Sometimes you would be back and then come up and play man. Are there ways to disguise it, or is it that simple? Now I realize if he goes in the slot, that would be a completely different ball game. But if he's lined up outside, which Fuller does about 80% of the time, could you not give that kind of, if you are a man 1 or a cover 3 type of a team, could you not give that disguise effectively even with a follow?
Nathan, absolutely. What are you doing on the radio? We could put you in the coaches meeting absolutely with that. And that is the one perfect disguise that you could play cover 1, man coverage, and cover 3 off of that. Being this is a Browns show, and that the Houston Texans do monitor those type of things. I tended not to want to talk about that type of coverage and those type of disguises. And to that point, one of the things that I would like to take advantage of that, but there is success within that concept right there that I absolutely do like. The one thing, though, that sometimes the cornerback ends up as the strong safety when you're trying to disguise that cover 1 or cover 3, and a cornerback as a strong safety sometimes in run support doesn't help you in the run game.
Sure.
Yet the Houston Texans are one of the worst running teams in the league, so that I will take that statistical kind of matchup from that perspective.
Bernie, let's put you in the position of Joe Woods, and you're trying to stop this Texans team that is very one-dimensional, and they can throw it down the field, obviously one of the better passing teams in this league, but also a quarterback who can run and who does hold on to the ball. It's rare where he's 3 steps and let it rip. He really likes to let things develop. How would you counter him? What do you think the plan ought to be on Sunday?
Again, not wanting maybe to give up all the maybe the game plans for him, but one of the things that, Myles Garrett, it's been imperative throughout the year that when Myles Garrett's healthy and making plays, he's a disruptive NFL Player of the Year type player, a turnover machine there. So when Myles is out there and you're able to get that pass rush for a team that's pretty one-dimensional, not really running the ball at all, and passing for almost all of their yardage, Jeremy Tunsil, their left tackle, is playing all-pro exceptional for the Houston Texans, unfortunately for us. That being said, their left tackle is phenomenal. The center of their line has been woefully bad, and the right side of their offensive line has been really struggled this year, getting an enormous amount of pressure on Deshaun Watson. So I typically love Myles Garrett on the blind side of a quarterback, getting pressure on him for a quarterback that drops deep, tends to hold on to the ball, doesn't get rid of it quick. But then he'd be going against Jeremy Tunsil. I believe Myles Garrett would be able to play against anybody, and he should not have to run from any tackle. That being said, though, some of the other offensive linemen are highly vulnerable. So maybe moving Myles Garrett around to take advantage of some less strength on the offensive line to create that pressure, and Deshaun Watson not being as big, putting pressure and a Myles Garrett in him, I think will disrupt some of the throwing game.
Bernie, I'll get you out of here on this one. We are playing the Houston Texans. We wish they were still the Houston Oilers. But from everything I have heard, what we are very happy of is that field at the Astrodome is no more, that was concrete. You played on it. What are some of your experience of the Astrodome, playing on that turf? What was that like?
Beau, you must be my PR agent. I love you to death. Thank you. My first college win, I was at the University of Miami, and I played the Houston Cougars in the Houston Astrodome in 1983. It was an awesome memory for me. And then my first pro start for the Cleveland Browns was against the Houston Oilers in the Astrodome. And to get 2 W's like that was one amazing honor for me. Unfortunately, then, they had to tear down the Astrodome to make way for progress and a new stadium. And now if you come to the farm in Manaway, you will see a piece of the Houston Astrodome in my basement there to remember those beautiful memories of Browns and Canes victories.
That is a beautiful thing. God bless you, buddy. Always great talking to you, my friend. Looking forward to talking to you again next week. Thanks for your time.
Sounds great. Go Browns.
Let's go.
All right, the great Bernie Kosar. And reminder, Bernie and all guests who appear on Cleveland Browns Daily do so via the Fifth Third Money Line. Fifth Third Bank making Cleveland Browns Daily a fifth third better. We go around the league coming up next. You'll listen to Cleveland Browns Daily on 850 ESPN Cleveland. Beau Bishop here for my great friends at Weather Seal Home Services. Look, they're your go-to for literally any home improvement need. It is November. You know what that means. Snow and ice and wind, rain this morning. The good weather is gone. Don't get stuck in the cold with that leaky roof, kids. Let the team at Weather Seal help. Those great roof offer, just $1 down, 7 years, 0% financing. You get the new roof your home needs and have a peace of mind this winter as well. Nothing better than that. Don't delay. Call Weather Seal today, 877-351-SEAL, or visit WeatherSealHomeservices.com. That sale ends at the end of this month. It's with approved credit, and prior sales are excluded. 877-351-SEAL, WeatherSealHomeservices.com. You're on.
Did you see a little bit of news from the college world? Maryland football will pause all team-related activities due to an elevated number of COVID-19 cases within the program. The Ohio State game scheduled for Saturday, November the 14th, has been canceled and will not be rescheduled. This just coming out from Maryland.
Well, boy, no, I had not seen it, as you could probably tell by my reaction.
Yes.
That's a pretty shocking. It's not shocking because this is widespread now.
Yep.
I mean, it's run amok. The virus has run amok, and it's infiltrated all parts of society and sport. From an Ohio State perspective, which obviously many of you out there listening would have a pretty high give-a-damn level on, this is the last line there, will not be rescheduled. Well, that is because the Big Ten chose to not have any wiggle room. The Big Ten decided to play football 3 weeks into October when it could have been played at the beginning of October, when it could have been played in their original plan, which called for Labor Day weekend. The Big Ten had 7 weeks to work with to try to get this in and chose not to. And so they have put, in this instance, it's Ohio State, in a little bit of jeopardy here because there is no way back. And they have mandated that you have to play 6 games of league play in order to be eligible for the Big Ten championship game, which, again, is ridiculous. There's no reason to put that type of yoke on your teams, and yet they are. And so now Ohio State loses an opportunity for that. And while this thing continues to spread, this is tough. It's a tough spot. It's a really tough spot. Folks, there are 4 SEC games canceled this weekend. The Cal-Arizona State game is likely to be canceled or postponed or canceled. And now this hits home with Ohio State and Maryland canceled with no makeup. So the notion that these people had of trying to push this back for hopes that I don't know what. I don't know if they were hoping science would save them or if they were hoping that it would all just go away. It never made sense to me. It didn't when they did it. I was saying it then. Start playing August 15th. Get in as quick as you can. And they chose not to. And now they're going to they're going to suffer for it pretty significantly. That's a big loss. Big loss. So opens up my Saturday, though. So that's positive.
It does. It probably makes your Thursday morning now incredibly interesting, beginning at 9 a.m.
Yes. It does make my Thursday morning quite interesting. All right, let's go around the league. Good news out of you. That's a good job out of you keeping an eye on that. I had not seen that.
After the last time that I gave you a big breaking news move, I had to deliver something.
Yeah, that's true. The NFL owners approve expanding the playoff plan and diversity members. This playoff plan is the move, and this is in response to, I'm sure, what we're seeing is this widespread spread of the coronavirus that we're seeing now, and most people think that this will just continue to get more and more. And the NFL with an insurance policy here that if somehow we are not able to play all of these games, we're going to go with 8 teams in each side making the playoffs. 16 teams as playoff teams going into it. I think it's smart. I don't think it's what they want to do, but I also think it's smart to have this in there so that you can get these things done.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that this is where we're going, and boy, it is tough. And it was kind of one of those things that you thought was maybe coming, right? That things were going to get, to your point, more difficult as we got into winter. And clearly this pandemic has not gone away. In fact, this pandemic is raging at a level we've never seen before. I know Mike DeWine is going to address the state of Ohio tonight at 5:30. We are up in the last 2 weeks 40% in terms of hospitalizations just from 2 weeks ago. So things in Ohio are getting very, very bad. I think it's one of those where now there may have been some of us, and myself included, where you knew of people who had gotten COVID, but it was never somebody that you really knew. And now in the last 2 weeks, I dozens of people that I know have gotten COVID. So it's dicey. I think you're going to see the NFL go into even more and more of a lockdown mode. I think you're going to see more of these intensive protocols. I think you're going to see that just kind of around the league. And remember, you went through in July, you pretty much went through the entire preseason without anybody testing positive. And now, and what's good is, and we knew they were going to have to play with it, and I give J.C. Treader and the league a ton of credit, is they have figured out a way that, you're getting it's seemingly a player or a staff member testing positive on almost every team, or at least in one for every game every week, and yet games are still being played. Yeah. And I think what we've learned from a science standpoint about it is it's not transmittable in games. There's not been one case of it going from one team to another team in a game situation. And in fact, we know for sure that there have been guys who have played in games asymptomatically, and then they end up testing positive right after the game, and it wasn't transferred from one to the other. So I think the NFL is doing a very good job of mitigating it. I think that the notion, and just, I know people who know kids at a lot of these big schools, and the idea of in college preventing the spread of this it's just not going to happen. And clearly you're seeing that run rampant. I think the NFL is likely to be the only show in town. I think the NBA will get going again, but in terms of college athletics, it is going to be a very difficult path forward, I really think. And really what you hope to get is that they can decide the playoff teams. I think the bowl games as we know it this year are going to be on a major hiatus, if it's not already, and you would know that better than I. But I don't see a lot of that happening.
They've opened them up to everybody. So you don't have to have a winning record. Like, the bowls are opened up to everybody this year, and theoretically they'll start as soon as they can in December. So to your point, I think in some instances you might not be playing any more games.
Yeah, I think you're going to
places. Like, Maryland's down 21 days now. That's the Big Ten rule. So Maryland's down. So it's today. They're missed at least 2 games, maybe 3 games. This is only an 8-game schedule in the Big Ten.
Right. So, almost, could get nearly, 40% of it wiped out there.
Right.
I almost think you're going to have to, and this is me just throwing stuff out of my own noggin, I think you're going to have to say, okay, who are the 4 best teams? Or even say this year, let's open it up to 8 and bubble them and play the college playoff over the course of 3 weeks.
I think you're right, and I think you could probably stay to 4, and you could probably identify them right now, and you could probably play Ohio State, Alabama, Notre Dame, and Clemson. And that would be the way to do it. And that's probably the way that would look. Ohio State's lucky they've played the 3 games. Which is, better than what it was going to be. But these are dicey times, certainly, in where we are with this at this moment.
Is there anybody else that would have a not legitimate claim, but that is right there with those teams?
Certainly not in a Power 5 perspective. Cincinnati's ranked in the top 10. BYU's ranked in the top 10. But in terms of, the teams that would have a gripe, but they'd be griping against Clemson would be Florida and Texas A&M. But Clemson has 1 loss. It's at Notre Dame,
Lawrence.
And it's with their backup quarterback.
Yeah.
So, in double overtime. So it's not like, Ungale, something like that.
Ungale.
It was not his fault. It was not his fault.
It was not.
No, it wasn't that either. He was great in the game, but Lawrence coming back, I think would have, it's reasonable to think they would have won, but Notre Dame would deserve to be there. They've played, I think, 7 or 8 games. So those would be the 4 teams. You can do this for a couple of more weeks, but now you're talking about a college football Saturday without 4 SEC games, including Alabama, LSU, without Ohio State, without a Pac-12. There's countless other games that are already being postponed around the country. The top 25 slate, there's like 8 games.
Can I interest you in the Masters?
Well, thrilled. Yeah, that's a big win.
That'll be a very big for the Masters this Saturday.
Yeah, they do. Fascinating stuff. This was interesting. Speaking as we continue around the league, Bill Belichick was asked about resigning as the head coach of the Jets. Now, I'm going to read this quote to you.
It's great.
and before I read, I will tell you folks, I've never heard him ever be this candid. One of, if not the most defining, but one of the great moments of my career. That combined with Robert Kraft giving me the opportunity to come here, I couldn't have asked for anything more. That wasn't a good situation for me. I didn't want to be a part of it, so I wasn't.
I remember from watching that documentary, I didn't remember at the time I was young, the two Bills, how that actually went down and how kind of scandalous in a way that it was.
So, yeah, and I'm remembering from that documentary, Parcells why did he want, was he trying to go somewhere else? Or because he ended up back with the Cowboys, was he trying to go somewhere else and it was, well, I'm giving you Belichick, so that's how I get out of my contract? Or what was his reason? Or did he just want to hand it to Belichick and let Belichick run it and as almost like, look what I've done for you. Here's your franchise.
I thought at the time he was, and I might be misremembering it. So Gibbe, if you remember it better than we do, jump in, please. But I thought Parcells was leaving or had to leave, right? So they turned over, but then he was, no, I'm not done. And he turned over, but Belichick didn't want it at that point. What I remember, and tell me if I'm remembering this incorrectly.
I don't remember.
Belichick was with the Jets, but then didn't want to be there anymore and basically
They named him the head coach.
Yes, and then within 2 weeks.
And he was out.
Yes.
He didn't want the job. So they call a press conference to name the head coach. Parcells steps down. They make him the head coach. He doesn't want it, then leaves to go coach the Patriots. So what happened with Parcells at that time that made him want out? And then was he thinking he was doing Bill a favor? Is that where the ill will was between he and Bill? That's the part. And I watched that documentary too, and I cannot recall if they even went into that.
It says
if they went into.
I'm reading a thing now. It says some harbor conspiracy theories believing Belichick was in cahoots with the Patriots before quitting the Jets and his mentor Bill Parcells. Then he briefly left the building with a briefcase, triggers images of a clandestine and improper activity. On some level, it's still shrouded in mystery. Some people know, and they refuse to this day to talk about what they know. Doubt I'll touch that one, said one longtime Belichick confidant. Interesting. Parcells.
Yeah. So we didn't really get a clear answer then.
Yeah, so you didn't really get a clear answer.
I think Parcells thought he was doing Belichick a favor. And he thought he was doing the Jets a favor because he was giving them Belichick, and then Belichick didn't want it. That's the perception I have of it.
Parcells says he was under contract to be the coach of the Jets if I wasn't there. That's just the way that it was.
Okay, so it was in his contract that if Parcells didn't want to coach the Jets, Belichick was then the head coach of the Jets. So that was the deal. Okay, so that's where the hard feelings came from. Yeah, interesting stuff, but incredibly candid out of him. One last thing that I want to get to, Christian McCaffrey getting a second opinion on his injured shoulder. He's out for Sunday. This is why you don't pay running backs. He's spectacular. He is. He had, what do you have, fantasy-wise, 30 points over the weekend?
Against me. Thanks for coming back for that 1 week. Jerk.
You're welcome. But then now he could be done for the year. So what's he going to play, 3 games?
Exactly. And by the way, Mike Davis was pretty darn good. Is he McCaffrey?
Yeah.
No. But is he, if you put his salary as a percentage of McCaffrey's salary, is he that percentage of McCaffrey? Significantly more.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's, again,
I do feel bad for McCaffrey because he's a spectacular weapon. He's just a spectacular weapon, but it's hard to say.
He's unbelievable, but again, it's a position that has such a high, what you would call, mortality rate in terms of injuries, and just it's like a high-class sports car. It's a declining asset. But here's what I look at is that, Mike Davis, 85 carries, 353 yards, 2 touchdowns rushing, so 4.2 a carry. McCaffrey was averaging 3.8 a carry. Davis, 43 catches for 280 yards and 2 touchdowns. McCaffrey, 17, 149, and 1. Davis obviously has played significantly more than McCaffrey due to the injury, but Davis was very productive. I mean, in 5 games, really, as a starter, he averaged over 100 total yards and almost a touchdown per game.
Yeah, no, it's just why you don't do it. Injuries during childbirth require experienced counsel. Call the lawyers at Elk & Elk for a clear answer as to what happened during your child's birth. Elk & Elk a proud partner of your Cleveland Browns. Call 1-800-ELK-OHIO today. So much more to come. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850.
So much.
Beau Bishop here for my great friends at Raising Cane's. On game day, you can go for the win with Raising Cane's chicken fingers. Stack your roster with delicious hand-battered, cooked-to-order chicken fingers and cane sauce. Double up on that. Huddle up with crispy, crinkle-cut fries, coleslaw, and buttery Texas toast. Top it all off with freshly made tea and lemonade. It's a big win for everybody. Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers, proud sponsor of the Ohio High School Association and Ohio State Athletics. Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers, one love. Also, be part of one of the most passionate fan bases in the NFL. Join the Browns season ticket member waitlist today for the best chance at securing tickets for home games in future seasons. Deposits start at just $100 per seat. Reserve your spot today by visiting clevelandbrowns.com. And tonight at 7, be sure to check out the Browns preview show. Ken Carmen, Gerard Cherry, University Hospital's Cleveland Browns Radio Network. The guys preview the second half of the Browns season. If you're just tuning in, the big news here in the sports world in the last half hour, the Ohio State game against Maryland this weekend has been canceled. There are 4 SEC games that have been either postponed or canceled already. Alabama's one of those. Maybe just play the Crimson Tide and the Buckeyes right now.
Go ahead. Sign me up.
Play them Saturday. They're both available.
Yes, they are.
Maybe
Quick,
that's the way we do it.
You were plugging so many great things. I want to do one more really quickly. Tonight, a new episode of Building the Browns at 8 p.m. on YouTube. Check it out. Behind the scenes look at how we've done the radio broadcasts. in this pandemic.
Oh.
So it's actually it's really cool with Jim and Doug, and Gibbe gets some serious interview airtime. My road trip to Pennsylvania, so it's pretty good. A lot of Gibbe. If you're hungry for more Gibbe content, there you go. So it's a huge building the Browns. It kind of goes into everything and some real great insights from Jimmy D, which is, I think, tremendous to see.
I've seen the clip of some of the Jimmy D stuff, which is great. So that's tonight at 8 o'clock on YouTube.
That's right. YouTube.com/Browns. Building the Browns. New episode.
My DVR is set. I look forward to that. All right. Enjoy your first Friday, kids. The next level is coming up next. We're back tomorrow. Cleveland Browns Daily, 850 ESPN Cleveland.